Hi, I'm Wes, the Explosion, and did you know that the first game I ever owned was Donkey Kong Country? That's right, my parents got that as a pack-in with the SNES for me and my brother, so I've been messing with platformers from the get-go. Because of this, I'm quite attached to the original trilogy, though I'd say each holds up well enough that I'd still be a fan, even if I had just tried them out yesterday. So, in the interest of branching out, and because my copy of The Misadventures of Trombone is acting up again, why not give the series a look, back where both it and my own journey began. Donkey Kong has a whole horde of bananas stashed in a cave under his house, but one night they're stolen by the Kremlings, so him and Diddy set out to get them back. And that's pretty much it. While I'm used to simple premises, normally it still takes more than one compound sentence to explain. Not that that's a bad thing. A game where the goal is to simply go right doesn't need a complicated setup, and you should probably just take this one at face value, since if you try to apply real-world logic to it, things start getting stupid. Could the Kong clan eat all those bananas before they went bad? Would seemingly carnivorous lizards need them for any reason themselves? Maybe to employ all the non-Kremlings in their army, like the vultures? And why do I need to go through the water? It looks like I should just be able to walk around. Let's just stick with monkeys want bananas. You can play as Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong. Both can walk, run, jump, and can either roll or cartwheel to attack while moving. The interesting thing about these is the weird function where if you roll off a ledge, it saves your jump so that you can leap midair. If you told me about this without context, I'd swear that this was a programming error, you didn't use your jump so the game lets you do so where you really shouldn't be able to, but there's plenty of extra collectibles you can only grab with this trick, so it was obviously intentional. Or originally a mistake, but then Rareware thought that it was cool enough that they didn't correct it and built some challenges around it instead. You can also build up speed as you take out enemies with the roll, which can really help you get ahead if you're being chased by an enemy or just want to go fast, but make sure you don't throw yourself into an obstacle. Each Kong dies in a single hit, but as long as you didn't fall to your death, you can retrieve your partner by grabbing a DK barrel. Free-floating ones break upon touch, but grounded ones, along with the regular steel and TNT barrels, can be thrown as weapons. You can even ride a rolling metal one. This is also where we start getting into the differences between Donkey and Diddy. Donkey holds barrels over his head, whereas Diddy puts them in front, and these can be used defensively. Donkey's working like a helmet, Diddy's like a shield. The second tends to be a bit more useful, especially since you can break open some walls for secret rooms, which Diddy can find just by walking into, whether you know it's there or not. That's not all though. Donkey also has a ground slap which can kill most enemies and earn an extra banana in the process. Plus, he can beat bigger baddies easier, whereas Diddy is faster. There's a few instances where this puts him in a pretty bad position, but more often than not, his quicker movement and ability to find secrets does make him the better choice. If you have both but want to swap, you can with a button press. You can also find animal buddies by busting them out of crates. You ride around on these guys, and if they get hit, they'll run off, though if you manage to catch them, probably because they hit a wall and came back, you can get back on. Rombi the Rhino can run ahead and has a hurt box in front of him. Unguard is largely the same, but underwater, and you can even get a little burst of speed by hitting the attack button. Espresso can run fast, walking over some short enemies, and flap his wings to slowly descend after a jump. Winky the Frog can jump high and take out most enemies this way, even if they'd typically be immune. Probably my favorite here. Squawks is the only one that you don't ride, him instead carrying a lamp to light your way in a dark cavern. As for collectibles, there are bananas scattered everywhere. 1 is 1 and a bunch is 10, and you get an extra life for every 100. Balloons will also grant you some extra lives, reds 1, greens 2, and blues 3. Each stage has 4 golden letters hiding throughout, K, O, and G. Find them all in a single run for an extra life, fail and be left with Ong, King, Cog, etc. as a reminder of your failure. There's also animal tokens you can grab, which when you snag 3, will transport you to a bonus stage where you can play as the animal in question and collect smaller tokens, getting an extra life for every 100, and there being a multiplier hidden somewhere in each. As you travel between stages, there are 3 helper Kongs you can encounter. Candy will save your game and Cranky will give advice, like how to take on some enemies and find secrets. You can only walk between the stages in a particular world that you're in, but Funky's flights will allow you to travel to any location you've already visited, even if they're on another part of the island. There's also 2-player modes. Nothing so fancy as simultaneous play, you just take turns controlling your respective Kongs. In 2-player co-op, one gets Donkey, the other Diddy, as if you were passing the controller back and forth. In Contest, you get both and try to finish the game first. Contest swaps between players when you go back to the stage select, win or lose, but in co-op, it could be pretty boring for one person if their partner refuses to die, so play nice with that select button. Never played Contest, but I have been known to enjoy co-op. It's a nice way to play an otherwise one-player game with someone else. If you work well together, it's a fun way to take turns and can give you someone else to help you through the parts that you might have trouble with, the two of you making up for each other's weak points. Hopefully minecart madness isn't impossible for the both of you. And if you have a weaker player, this is a good way to show them the ropes and help them through a game that they might not be able to clear otherwise, it almost functioning like a built-in Big Brother mode. Even in co-op though, it can still be a little competitive. Regardless of how you play, whichever Kong clears a stage will mark it with their face. Co-op keeps track of that, so you can get a bit of a rivalry going to see who can clear more. I was Donkey Kong, by the way. There are 6 worlds, assuming you're not counting the separate final boss as a 7th. You get a jungle, mines, forest, icy peak, factory, and cavern. In addition to the area's stages, each of the other 3 Kongs will show up at some point along your route, and of course there will be a boss at the end. And while each section does have a theme, it doesn't limit itself to these too much. Factory stuff is just in the factory and snow at the peak, but the jungle sprites, Ewok Village, and mines can still show up even after you get past the world that they're the main theme. The game takes place on an island after all. No one spot can claim to have a copyright on trees or caves. So while this does give some places less of an identity, it also allows them to distribute things as they want. No need to stuff in all the ideas they have for a particular environment altogether, or tone down the difficulty for a jungle jape stage because they need it to fit in at the start of the game. This might be a detriment if you're expecting worlds with strong themes like in Mario, but I think it helps the game flow pretty nicely. As for the levels themselves, each has the 4 Kong letters I mentioned before, along with the checkpoint barrel at around the halfway point, and an exit with a signpost and sometimes arrows pointing in its general direction, in case you got lost in the Go Right game. They recycle a lot of gimmicks over and over again, but remix them so that it feels like there's more variety here than there actually is. Climb on ropes, swing on ropes, climb on ropes that scroll, jump from ropes that move you up and down, get blasted from barrels that stay in place, ones that move back and forth, ones that rotate, ones that stay still that you have to time to line up with ones that do move. Lights turn out, dark but with light switches, dark but with a lamp, some fog. Swim, swim while being chased, swim around enemies with different movement patterns and projectiles. Moving platform with a fuel gauge. Minecarts you jump with, minecarts you jump from. There's more, but I think I hit all the major ones. It feels a lot like some of the stuff you see in Mario Maker, however many years later that was, where you have only so many tools at your disposal, but creative people manage to put them together in a ton of different ways, some of which you might not have considered yourself. Of course, the limited options here are self-imposed, or maybe limited by cartridge, but whether the game feels like it's always changing things up or constantly throwing the same crap at you over and over again is really gonna come down to how you look at it. On top of all that, there's a ton of secrets piled in. There's hidden collectibles, doors you can find by smashing barrels into walls, and blast barrels. Some are obvious, some you have to watch out for subtle hints like an errant banana, or odd patterns on the floor. Some you find completely by mistake, jumping off a stage at just the right spot. Some contain extra items, barrel challenges, minigames, or even skips. These last ones can be really crazy. You immediately walking out the door or jumping off an edge at the start of the level, just to get plopped back in right near the exit sign. It's fascinating watching someone speedrun this. To say it again, variety's kind of in the eye of the beholder here, but I enjoy the level design, and still get a kick out of whenever I find something I didn't come across previously. If I haven't seen it, it's new to me. The primary antagonists are the Kremlings, lizard people who have stolen your bananas, though they make up only a portion of the roster. Beavers, hostile aquatic life, vultures, armadillos, even an evil barrel-hurling orangutan called Manky Kong shows up. Bet he won't be invited to the next reunion. And let's not forget about the Zinger! There's also a fair bit of recolors, some of which function a bit differently, like jumping rather than simply walking, though some of them, I couldn't tell you what makes them special. If you're Diddy, the big ones to watch out for are Army, which needs to be jumped on an extra time to get them out of their roll, Clump, who can't be taken out with a jump, and Crusha, who can only be killed with barrels, one version even Donkey needs a weapon for. Then, for bosses, you have 7, or 5 depending on how you look at it. There are 2 large naughties, which jump around, and 2 neckies, which upchuck coconuts before you can counter them. The second versions of each get a bit more aggressive while also changing colors. The Zinger boss comes at you in a pretty straightforward manner before flying around like crazy after getting smacked with a barrel. The enemy drum throws out increasingly nasty pairs of baddies in between trying to crush you. And King K. Rool, the leader of the Kremlings... It's been a long time, I can talk about it, right? Okay, he takes 10 hits to beat, 3 sets of attack patterns, each one getting longer as you go. At first, he just runs back and forth, throwing his crown, which is your opportunity to attack. Then he starts firing cannonballs at the deck. Then he hops across the screen. I feel like this was a pretty long fight for the time, rule of 3 governing a lot of boss battles, though he is the finale, and when you think of it as 3 squared, or close enough, it kind of works. Plus, final bosses kinda got longer as Rareware went on. Please do not ask me about Gruntilda. The part that really stands out, though, is the fake out. Hit K. Rool 7 times and he'll collapse, and some false credits start rolling. If you're the type to just ignore these, it might fool you, though if you read any of them, that something's up is pretty obvious. But after a short sequence, he gets back up for the last phase. If you were a kid, this probably felt like a dirty trick, and I even had a friend who told me about how this made him cry as he ran out of the room to tell his mom, only to come back and find himself beaten. But I think that it's a really good gag, and they only do it the first round, so it doesn't get annoying with multiple attempts. Once you get the 10th hit, you get the typical big banana as your reward, which the lack of you could say was another hint at the earlier ruse. While I like the cast of enemies, I did find it kind of weird when I realized that the only boss that was a Kremling was the final one. I'm actually wondering whether you wind up taking out more of them, or the other creatures supplementing their army. Seems odd since they are billed as the main baddies, but maybe I should just look at it as them being real good at delegating. Rareware used some weird tech to use pre-rendered 3D sprites, and I only kind of understand the specifics, but I imagine you could find some really cool videos explaining it out there. What I can say is that, while most NES games used more flat-looking pixels, this was really impressive for the time, and I mean, while I'm not seeing individual hairs on Donkey and Diddy, I still really like the way things look. Granted, with this being my first actual game, I might not have had the context to fully understand what a major jump this was, but hey, everything looks good, with fun designs, never any real confusion over what you're looking at, it does look 3D on a system that's not really designed for it, and on top of that, there are a lot of good animations. When you go idle, when you win or lose a mini-game, just the basic movements, everything is very pleasant, and some of these things are so small they hardly feel worth putting in, yet when you notice them, you really appreciate it. So not only is it technically impressive, but you can really feel the love put into the game with all the little details. Now I sound old, praising a game that came out 30 years ago to high heavens. The soundtrack is interesting. While most games try to match their tunes to the stage or challenge they're paired with, I typically expect something peppy or catchy or rockin' or the like for the genre, but the ones here are all about mood. Yeah, there's still some of that high energy type stuff like the bonus room and Gangplank Galleon, and of course Jungle Japes works really well as the main theme, but there's also quite a few that are downright tense. Not that this doesn't happen in other games, it's just that while I'd listen to most Mega Man tracks either actively to pump myself up or in the background to relax, some here, like those for the minecart, might actually stress me out a bit if I just listen to them without the game. Some of the cave themes are sparser and more subdued, to make you feel a bit isolated, and Candy Kong's almost sounds like something out of a cheap porno. And of course Aquatic Ambiance is more peaceful and pretty, as if it's trying to get you to slow down and take in the scene. Which ain't a bad idea given that you have more places that you can check when you're less bound by gravity. My personal favorite is Fear Factory, since it sounds cool and dangerous, yet there is a section in the middle that sounds a bit contemplative and prettier, almost like a reprieve. I guess what I'm saying is, the music sounds a bit more tailored to the experience here, hinting at what to expect and also what's expected of you. I'd almost say that they feel like something between a video game and a movie soundtrack, if that makes sense. But it doesn't end there with sound. There's a lot of smaller stuff fit in. Basic sound effects like jumping off tires, barrel blast, and getting collectibles are good, plus there's a bunch of cries for when you or an enemy gets hit. Donkey Kong will even beat his chest and cry out if you're idle for too long. One of the nicest touches though are when you're down a Kong, any nearby DK barrels will start making monkey noises to let you know that your buddy is close. It's a good way of getting the information across without straight up assaulting you with it. I don't know whether this game is hard. I remember having a lot of trouble with it as a kid, but it was the first I got my hands on, so no previous experience to work off of, and limited TV time to also cut down on my chances to build some. These days though, I can clear it in a few hours, and the last standard run I did, I ended with around 50 lives, so I feel a little weird calling it hard. At the same time, I think there's enough here to give regular players a bit of a challenge, and I mean, the minecart and some of the barrel segments are kind of infamous. Plus, with the way your save options are laid out, either Candy Kong or Funky Kong in a pinch, if you do game over before you find one of them, you can wind up losing a lot of progress. That can add a good bit of stress if you're not able to just slam through the game, and tempt players to find somewhere to farm bananas, but like we talk about with a lot of retro games, save states and rewind will likely be available, which eliminates that threat. So if I had to give the game a rating, medium difficulty? Can I get away with saying that? Do I need to start farming these assessments out to more casual players? That said, there is the 101% run. To do this, you need to find all the bonus rooms, though you don't actually have to win any minigames that they contain. There are enough of these that it's pretty unlikely you'll come across them all without some sort of guide, which I did for the first time recently, and even then, I thought I'd gotten everything, but when I went back through, I found one stage that didn't have an exclamation point after its name, which is how you can tell if you found everything. Took me a few more attempts, because it turns out there was a bonus room inside a bonus room that you have to find by winning a barrel and smashing it into a wall in a particular way so as to not trigger the victory animation. That's pretty wild. And all you get for your trouble is a bit of praise from your dad when you beat the game, so it's mostly a bragging rights thing. If you go for everything, you better come prepared, but if you're just doing a normal run, which I'd recommend for your first time and just kind of in general for all but the hardcores, I'd say it's a pleasant level of difficulty. At least as long as you have save states. Having to redo half a world because you died too many times is pretty rough. Donkey Kong Country is a very impressive start for a series. Not only did they manage to stuff a lot of technically remarkable stuff into that old cartridge, but there's also a ton of secrets and subtle little mechanics that I'm still learning new things, all these years later. Even just as a platformer, the gameplay is still pretty solid. That said, while I think the game holds up and would still be happy to play it any day of the week, it does feel a little lacking, especially when compared to its sequels. While the gimmicks are open to interpretation, I'd say it lacks variety when it comes to enemies, locales, and bonus games, the last of which only nets you extra items rather than anything too exciting. If I have one complaint with the original, it's that it isn't more. And while that might seem weird to say given how overwhelmingly positive I've been of the game, I've also seen where the series goes, and it's kind of hard not to compare. But if you want to hear about that, this video needs to do well. Or I need another filler week. Either or. For now though, how about you? What do you think of Donkey Kong Country? Does it do a lot with a little? Am I not giving it enough credit? Or is it overrated, repetitive nonsense? With that, thanks as always for watching, and maybe consider subscribing if you're into retro game, especially platformers. Now you're playing with power.